began about 27 years ago. I was 22 years old. I was the president of the MSU Rodeo Club. And in January, a obstinate fire marshal came into our facility and told us that he was canceling our rodeo. The club had $30,000 plus invested in it. It was a 13-year-old rodeo. It was the largest student-run rodeo east of the Mississippi, and I wasn't about to let it fall. So I started to search for some help, not knowing where to go, who to talk to. I ran into Denny Welch. Denny, where are you?
Right here.
Right over there. So Denny was the rodeo for River Falls back then, and so he directed me to Paul. Who's this Paul guy, right? So I remember very well my first moment to meet Paul. Denny took me to his office. Papers were stacked on his desk so high you couldn't see him. Sound familiar? Like his barn, like his garage, right, Cindy?
Yeah.
They were on his floor, on his desk, with books everywhere. So he must be really, really smart. But what stuck out to me most was his Rolodex. Dude, this guy had a Rolodex that was like a double-wheeled Rolodex. There wasn't room for another card in there. It was stacked full. He was connected. So I presented my predicament to Paul, and he calmly gave me that Paul look. I don't know how many people have seen that first picture in that. That's Paul's look, right? Everybody's seen it. He just gives you that look like, what's the problem? So please realize I'm not a patient person. I wanted this problem solved, and I want it solved right now. But Paul's look was like, that's not so tough. I can help you with that. I had no idea how he was going to solve it, right? So we set up a meeting with the fire marshal to meet at the pavilion, and he drags in the state armor. And all of a sudden, this MSU fire marshal was just kind of quivering his boots. Okay, whatever you want to do. But he did. He solved the problem. But that was Paul's way. It's what he did, right? So, I mean, over the next 27 years, he solved a few of my problems. Let's just name a few. No power in my house just days before my daughter's, Miriam's, graduation party. Paul arrives. A few too many parking tickets with DPS. Paul arrives.
More than a
few. My family cottage. Eroding bank. My father didn't do anything about it. We needed to take care of it. I got the labor, he got the idea. 22 of my friends from college, 2 weekends at the cottage, and we put in 500 railroad ties. A very hot Memorial Day weekend. Remember this one? Cow Camp Rodeo. I rented a RV because I was tired of laying on the ground and camping. I was getting old at that age, I was probably 24, 25.
Feeling it, huh?
So it was hot. And they were going to charge us for every hour we used the air conditioner. So some electrician changed that routing on that meter. It's surprising that there wasn't any time on their air conditioner when I took it back. But of course, the biggest, he helped me through, was my brother and my father's death. I was a scared kid, trying to make sense of losing an idol and a dad I hardly knew. But Paul was there. He was there every time. From cleaning out my brother's apartment in his hangar, he was always there to help out. But that's the way Paul is. Always giving more than receiving. Being there no matter what. And as I prepared for this party, I realized from all of you that you've all experienced it. How many out there have put in that SOS message to Paul and he fixed the problem? Raise your hand. So when I organized this party, Paul was like, no, we're not doing this. Nobody will come. He said that. I said, yeah, I bet you haven't impacted anybody's life out there. But that's not true. So, to you, Paul, thanks for everything. You've been a mentor, a dad, a counselor, a brother, and always had my back. Thanks for being my best friend.
Here.
So Shirley, you're up next. Shirley had a really interesting request. She just wanted 3 minutes. And apparently Paul did something in her retirement. So Shirley, it's all yours.
Well, good evening, Paul, Cindy, fellow attendees. Paul, I'm so delighted to be able to be part of your retirement party. It's something I've looked forward to for a long time. I do want to congratulate you on your retirement, and I know that you and Cindy are going to enjoy this phase of your life. I do want to share some memories that I have of Paul with the group, and when I was thinking about this, I decided I felt a little like Shelley Winters when she was writing her autobiography. She said she was writing it as she remembered it, and that it might not all be correct, but people remember the things the way they want to. I met Paul many years ago when I was working in the psychiatry department, and my children have grown up hearing Paul's stories. Now, Paul is, of course, well known for his work with firemen throughout the state and country, but I want to share a little story with you about what happened to Paul quite a few years ago. Paul would go out to the various fire departments and he would be teaching them advanced fire techniques. And one evening he had to go to one of the rural areas for his class, and just as he arrived, a fire call came in. And the department chief asked Paul to immediately go out and spot wherever they would put the equipment. Now I've got to give you just a little background information here. Paul was driving his little yellow Porsche, and if my memory serves me right, he was wearing a purple velour shirt, white pants, and white buck shoes. And the farmer turned to his wife and he said, "Damn, Maud, the whole place is gonna go." Well, after the fire, of course, he came up to Paul and he thanked him for the incredible job that he had done in spite of his earlier reservations. Now, that little yellow Porsche sometimes seemed to cause a lot of problems. We were having a department luncheon one day, and of course Paul couldn't take anybody in his car. So I very graciously volunteered to take a group in my Suburban. And when we got back to the office, Paul practically flew out of the car, dropped to his knees, and kissed the ground. Now then he had the audacity to call my husband and tell him that he had barely made it out alive, and I had chased all the squirrels across campus. The last memory I want to share with you is at my retirement party, and it was a very dignified affair until Paul arrived. And then he came in and he was fully gowned with his fireman suit on, including helmet and axe, and he said that it was going to start getting deep in there, and that he hoped that he could make it very interesting. Well, he did. And so tonight, Paul, I hope I've been able to return the favor. Thank you, Derek.
Nice job. Nice job. So next up is Mr. Thiel. All yours. Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Thiel.
My name is John Thiel. I'm a retired orthopedic surgeon, and I've known Barb and I. This Howell group, you gotta forgive the Howell group. It says here, I've known Paul 55 years. So that means I met him when we were 1 year old. I met Paul in middle school, which we then called junior high school. Now it's middle school. Paul's an electronic expert, we know that. And my father was a morning disc jockey, first one at WHMI in Howell. And even though he had engineers, the tower would go out periodically, especially in the winter, many times. Who'd he call? He called Paul to fix the tower. And it was very colorful language. You get Paul to bed and he'd fix the tower. And when he was still in high school, which we appreciated. Now Paul and Barry Doran, Ray Lemon and I lived together in 1970 at Cedar Village. And we didn't burn couches, but we lived in Cedar Village that year. And we had a great time senior year. And we had a very unusual apartment. We had the best sound system you've ever had, ever, 1970. The hi-fi stereo, great time. If the phone rang, you push a button, their stereo went off. You could talk on the phone. You could talk between rooms on the phone to talk to each other. It's the only apartment that had talking artificial plants. Now there's a few of us here know what that meant. It was quite a place. Paul had an excellent sense of timing. We did not have clocks in our apartment or wristwatches because we knew when it was 11 p.m. Paul had a special, never mind. We knew it was 11 o'clock. My wife Barbara, from 44 years, would often type his papers, one page at a time. Paul would write the page, bring it in, Barbara would type it, he'd go back to writing more pages. I practiced in Gaylord for 18 years and then Charlotte 14 years. When I moved down here in 99, one of my first weeks as a physician, I had a man come in, retired state trooper, and he said, "Where did you grow up, John?" I said, "Howell." You know, "Oh my God, one of my best friends from Howell. You'd never know him. His name is Paul Streng." I said, "Well, let's see, I've known him since middle school. We're in each other's weddings. I lived in senior estate, but I have no idea who you're talking about." You know, Paul, all your accomplishments are wonderful, but you're a wonderful friend who we all love dearly. And you've always been there for your friends, always. It's a phone call away and Paul takes care of you. We're very proud of you. We love you and consider you as a dear friend. God bless you in your retirement.
Next up is Bob Monford.
This could be good.
How long is class? 55 years.
Which way was the restroom?
He's retired, so he had a lot of time to write.
And I'm programmed for 50 minutes. First of all, Paul, would you step out where folks can see you and lift your pant legs a bit?
Here they are.
Are we on now?
Fix that microphone. Do you
Yeah, Paul?
Paul rigged it. He rigged it.
Yeah, I believe. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's a sign.
Now, this is apparently a semi-formal occasion because Paul's got brown boots on. Normally, for a formal occasion, they have black boots on, but he told me that he had brown pants on, so they had to match.
See, back when we knew Paul, he didn't even have boots.
Well, but there's a little bit of that story that we need to go through about those people. I'm a retired MSU faculty member, department head, and I worked for Paul for several years. So I have a few stories, and there are a few people in the room who have provided a few stories that might help to amplify this a bit. And
Where you going, Paul?
There are a couple of ladies in the room. I might turn the mic. Well, Nicholas is that thing. I might turn the podium over to you before we're done. Now we've already heard that this guy's a unique fellow. And I got to tell you, been around the world a few times, been at various few places. Yeah, he's unique. Now, how long have I known him? I'm not sure. It might be about 10 seconds because I haven't figured him out yet. So that means I must need to know him. I first met him 25 years ago.
Oh my God.
That's in the ballpark.
Something like that. Well, I've only experienced that last 25 years of his life, but it's left me with many, many stories, and I want to share a few of these. Now, these stories are all based on fact. They have been embellished to the point that about half of what I say is true. It's up to you to determine which half. I should add the disclaimer that I'm retired from MSU. I have no formal affiliation with the institution. Furthermore, I have no political aspirations. And my wife has two kinds of money, hers and mine. Hence, you cannot sue me for what I have, and you cannot damage my political future by misquoting what I say. Now let's start with the obvious. We already talked about what Paul's got on his feet. Paul wears cowboy boots most of the time, but to the best of my knowledge, he has never owned a horse. He and Bill Humphrey, and I didn't realize he and actually Roger with the rodeo club. He and Bill Humphrey were advisors to the rodeo club. So I'm pretty sure he's been close to a horse. But I have no evidence that he ever rode one. I asked him why he wore them, and he gave me some story about having fallen off a radio tower when he was in college and severely breaking his ankle, and the boots supplied more support. Well, I recall a similar story about Chinese women having their feet bound to make them smaller. Can you imagine what size his feet would be if he hadn't fallen off that tower? And speaking of the fall, because of the injury, he had to drop out for a semester. I have inside information that he was so far behind in his classwork that the only way to prevent flunking out was to have a medical excuse. That does bring to mind Paul's creativity. You cannot out-geek a guy who, as a teenager, built his own radio from a Heath kit. For those of you too young to know, and that's about half of the group, that's a box of transistors, resistors, capacitors, inductors, and a piece of fiberglass board over which you solder, sweat, and swear. And about 10% of the time you get something that resembles a radio. If you don't swear too much, it'll pick up NPR. Knowing this about Paul, I asked him to help me rig up an expensive piece of instrumentation so we could trick it into automatically taking a sample at pre-programmed times. Using a Radio Shack, well, that's another one of those defunct electronic firms. Timer and a piece of parallel printer cable, we succeeded in getting it to do what we wanted. Any guess what the objective was? We wanted to be better able to detect the odor of pig shit. And it worked! At least we could now place him on a farm, but not yet on a horse. It could be that he rode a pig, but I never saw it. Which reminds me of another story which evolved out of an engineering department heads meeting. It was a nice spring day, just like today, with the wind blowing out of the south. And the odor of swine manure was, well, detectable. Several of the department heads commented on the odor. And I replied that odor was a good indicator of the direction of the wind. If it smelled like sheep, it was from the south. If you've lived on worked on the MSU campus, you can reflect on this. If it smelled like dairy, it was from the southwest. And if it smelled like swine, it was from the southeast. I added that one had to be able to tell the difference and it was unlikely that pure engineering faculty could tell the difference. One department head, who was Jewish, simply replied, "My religion's been able to tell for centuries." Paul has always been willing to help me with some oddball project. In 2001, I bought a 1959 John Deere 830 in Winnipeg. That's a big old farm tractor. I had it shipped to the States, and on 9/11 it was sitting on the dock on the Canadian border. It took me about 2 months to get it cleared across the border because the Department of Homeland Security thought it was filled with terrorists. Lacking a loading dock near my farm, I had it delivered to the Crop and Soil Science Farm. Then on a crisp Saturday morning, I drove it the 26 miles from there to our place. Paul escorted me with flashers on in his faithful old Ford diesel pickup. However, the interesting point is that when we went to start it, what a process. This is a 6-volt system that started a 4-cylinder gasoline engine, which in turn was used to start a 2-cylinder diesel engine. Now, if my understanding of number sequence is correct, the next step is 0. That applied to the battery, which of course was dead. Before I could say anything to Paul, he proceeded to reach under the seat, connect the jumper cables to the battery. And I asked him, how the devil did he know that the battery was under the seat? And he gave me that, how dumb can you be, look? I recall one other time he gave me that look. When we loaded the tractor on the trailer and were chaining it down. Initially, I put one of the chain binders on upside down and got that look. Speaking of odd looks, 2 of the female members of the department told me that Paul told them how to clean their balls. Mousetrack balls. Seems as though the proper method was to remove them, put them in your mouth, roll them around with your tongue. It's useful to have a Kleenex handy when you do so. I asked him, or asked them, if they'd ever seen him do this to his own. And they told me that he always did it behind closed doors. Speaking of Paul's pickup, I always thought that he would replace the faithful old diesel with another diesel. Many think that the ideal number of cylinders for diesel is 6, but Ford seems to think 8 is better. However, it wasn't good enough for Paul, so he bought one with 10. Well, it was gas, but... Now, many of you are from Paul's community, and you know he's the former mayor of that town east of here. At the time he became mayor of the town, it had finally eradicated the last of the Ku Klux Klan. You can't be a mayor under those circumstances without being politically connected. And some in the university community resented his connection. I suspect that's still true. Not only that, but he came to Ag Engineering from the Department of Psychology and brought with him some of the tools that had rubbed off on him there. He seemed to have become the resident shrink for the department. Apparently his talents weren't always successful, because it was well known that one of the secretaries in the department would follow him to the restroom and talk to him through the door the whole time he was in there. I never witnessed this, but I'm also told that his responses weren't always of the reassuring kind. But Paul seems to be able to relate to anyone. I cannot resist repeating the story he told me about an encounter with a female member of the MSU police force. Here comes Paul. She was openly gay, and in the course of the conversation, an attractive female passed by. They looked at each other, and the policewoman says, "Well, we have one thing in common." Paul says, "What's that?" And she replied, "We both like attractive women." Well, that wasn't exactly what she said, but this is a mixed and conservative audience.
So far.
Paul always told me that he was going to complete his master's degree, but he kept falling off the radio tower. However, that didn't keep him from being a very valuable member of the construction management department. He was an instigator in separating the CM program from the ag engineering department and wrote a good bit of the documentation used to justify the separation. While many resented the separation when it happened, I think most will now agree that it was best for all. By the way, Valerie, you probably know this. What is the number for the main office in the School of Planning, Design, and Construction? 432-0704. Why? Because the school became a standalone entity in July 2004. That was Paul's idea. Now we're going to talk about Paul's love for everything electrical. I have this vision of his barn that must be filled with electrical items purchased from MSU Salvage, somewhat resembling a teenager's closet. In fact, I've always assumed that the reason Paul and Roger were good friends was because Paul spent so much time digging through the material Roger had at Salvage. Who else would take a World War II generator to a ham radio gathering in a 1960s Airstream trailer? Paul's always been involved in the local fire department. That meant he had some training in the fire prevention and firefighting, and had some experience in driving big trucks. In fact, I think it was because of big trucks that he liked the department. He was the only one I could trust to drive my old 47 Dodge truck. And he did so several times in 4th of July parades, sometimes completing the parade, sometimes not. It also meant that he could contribute to the construction management curriculum. Over the years, his involvement evolved from teaching material related to fire and fire protection to contracts and contract management based on his mayoral experiences and probably not the Ku Klux Klan, and to nearly every other course in the construction management program. Many faculty members considered him unqualified to teach courses in the program until they were assigned a course, whereupon he became the most qualified. He once rescued me when I had made a bad hire for a course. In the middle of the term, I asked Paul to come back from the Caribbean to finish the course. Now that's dedication. So when we said, raise your hand, has he ever bailed you out? Well, that's just one instance, but that was a big bailout. Every year I would conduct exit interviews with the graduating senior students, and they consistently mentioned Dr. Streng and Professor Streng as having had a major impact on their MSU experience. I asked him if he'd be interested in teaching a study abroad program in Russia. And he did so until he got nervous about the proximity to Chechnya. So we opted for safer digs and taught in Italy. And of course, we can't forget that he taught a full semester in Dubai. Dubai students thought highly of him. Some of the study abroad students didn't, however, because he thought they should come to class sober. And in keeping with broadening the international experience, Paul became acquainted with the legal systems in Russia and Italy in the process of bringing the lost sheep back to the fold. It should be obvious to you that I have great respect for Paul as a person and for his accomplishments and for his idiosyncrasies. It is fitting that we raise a toast to the nearly departed. Do you know what might be in this glass? Chivas.
Here's the ball.
Well, let's
mixed audience, Paul.
So there were a few people that couldn't attend. Imagine that. So I got a letter from Dick and Jean Gallagher.
Oh dear.
So I'll read it out loud, but again, I gotta put my glasses on. Congratulations on your retirement. I'm sorry I could not make it there. You have been a good friend for a long time. Since we settled in Texas, we don't see much of each other. You also have been a good friend to both of my boys by helping them get jobs at MSU and helping Brad find a career he likes, and he's done so well. Been thinking of all the things we've done together, playing with radio scavenged from Motorola, trips to Dayton, snowmobiling with the GM Proving Grounds guys. He convinced me to go one time and I got run over by a snowmobile. And cleaning out your damn garage and barn. All to almost no lasting effect. Except last I knew, Cindy still could park her car in the garage.
Yes, right. I still can, yes. I don't leave it up very long though, trust me. For all this time and not learned nothing.
Well, at least I won't have to help clean out that barn again using the largest dumpster I've ever seen. I bet the next time it will take at least 2 of those dumpsters. You have been the king of hoarders. Anyways, that's...
Just a bit. Half of his stuff is in my barn. He's straight.
He's got some stuff in my barn. He's got some stuff outside of my barn.
Thanks, guys.
So, when I was putting this together, I decided that one of the people that I think Paul held in high regard was President Simon. So I went to President Simon to see if she could attend, and unfortunately she couldn't make it. But she was nice enough to write a letter. Dear Mr. Streng, on behalf of the entire Michigan State University community, as well as the students and citizens you have served in the Lansing community, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks for your 43 years of service to the Department of Psychiatry and the Department of Agricultural Engineering and the university. Through your work and dedication as a Spartan, you have inspired many students and colleagues that have made tremendous impact on the state, nation, and world. Through your extensive involvement and intellectual accomplishments, you will be particularly well remembered for your instrumental work towards developing the School of Planning, Design, and Construction, as well as the countless student organizations you have advised and the boards and committees that you've served on. Michigan State University has been able to develop an international reputation of academics and learning excellence through your commitment and dedication. Thank you for representing the best of Team MSU. I saved the best for last. So when I started putting this together, there was a certain person that Paul was adamant would not attend. So what do? I go right after him, right? And it took a little bit of digging and searching and trying to track this gentleman down through the Retired State Police Officers Association. But I got a chance to get a hold of him. Unfortunately, his health didn't allow him to attend. We just made the decision last month that he wouldn't be able to make it. You know who I'm talking about?
Rich?
Yeah. So Rich Davis and I have been on the phone quite a bit to talk about stuff. And so he was kind enough to write a letter.
Wait a minute, let me check my wallet first.
Is there a missing credit card? There's a story behind that. Paul, I am sorry that I could not attend your retirement celebration. However, you are probably fortunate that I'm not able to be there. There are so many stories, other than the one I will describe, that you would be faced with. Of course, over the many years, Paul got to know several troopers and employees at MSB. Back in the late 1980s, it seemed that an MSU calf got loose from a trailer that Paul had not secured. That's not true. It was me. In a panic, he called Roger to get over to Hazlet to help him round up the calf. That's true. As Roger arrived, Paul is getting out of the Michigan State Police helicopter. I'm going, how does one do this? So he actually got the pilot to come pick him up in Hazlet and go search for this calf that I'd been searching for all night long. So in return, the problem was that the flight was never been recorded, was never approved by MSP operations. Paul just knew one of the pilots. MSP sent a bill for services to Paul for $700, which he never paid. An award was issued for his arrest, but was rescinded several years later. The MSP pilot was fired and is currently on welfare. By the way, the helicopter had to leave the scene in Hazlet in a hurry. Why, Paul?
Because they were going to pick up Rich.
I was unaware of this situation at the time, but had I known it, there would have been hell to pay. So with that, here's your overdue invoice. With interest. But he's not done yet. Paul and I had many lunches over the years, and of course he never paid for any of them. And at my retirement, he attempted to play a joke on me, but it fizzled badly. He was really not impressed. He just never could get it together. As a fire chief, mayor, and a planning commissioner for the city of Howell, it's no wonder the city is in such desperate shape. On the serious side, MSU is losing one hardworking professional employee. Paul was always very supportive of me and the MSP, and we enjoyed many good times. Congratulations, Paul, on a well-earned, well-deserved retirement. I wish you and Cindy a happy and healthy life of leisure.
What goes around comes around. Well, I've been thinking for a while what I'm going to say up here tonight, and I haven't had a clue where I'm going to go. I've got to thank Roger for putting it all together. With a lot of help from Kim Hafley. I don't know who Kim is. There she is. So the two of them did a super job. And you know, I think Roger kind of hit it when he was talking about you know, how he felt about me, and I wish they were saying it with him. And I'm not going to go there because I won't be able to keep it together. But the people that I invited, that I said I wanted to have here, are the people that had an impact on my life. Okay, from the time we were in junior high, you know, on up through when we were roommates in college, and roommates in college, and roommates, no. Roommates in Dayton. So, you know, but every one of you have meant a lot to me, and your friendship over the years, the kind of things that you've done for me, and I'm just glad you all could come. And Roger told me an untruth, because he told me that Bob and Judy weren't going to be able to make it.
I did not. Paul, you asked me if they were, you said, Bob and Judy weren't coming, right?
Because they came from Virginia.
Ann Donahue.
Ann Donahue is here, and she came from Colorado.
Yeah.
So, and there's actually a couple people here from U of M. I won't point them out because I don't want to get hurt.
So, but I'm glad you all could come. You've all meant a lot to me over the years, different stages in my life. I just can't believe how many people have shown up. You know, I could start right here with Don, and I could go right around the room, and I could tell stories all night. That's not what we're here for. You know, we're here to you know, socialize with each other, and so thank you very much, Raj. Thank you. There's
My pleasure.
no way I can thank you enough for this.
Hey,
And,
Paul, tell us about your barn in your garage.
well, my garage is painted white, and my barn's painted red. So, thanks, Ralph. I appreciate y'all coming. Thank you very much. I want to get around and be able to chat with everybody, so I don't want to talk all night. Thanks very much.
The real stories will be at this table.
Gather around.
The bar will continue to be open.